stunning. This EV with us on Tech Today, and of course, the location. This is the Audi Q8 Etron SUV, an exclusive first look on Tech Today. We brought you out to the rugged outdoors because we thought this was an SUV which needs to be put through its paces. But while I'm also shooting, when the team takes a break, I've been thinking of updating my Instagram profile. And of course, I write tech geek, auto enthusiast, I love food, I love fitness. And I thought, let's make it sound a little woke, a little smarter. And I came up with a word that I found of late, thalassophile. You know what that means? It means someone who's drawn to the water or the sea. Now, I'm not really a mountains person. I'm more of a beaches person. We're here in the middle of Karnataka. I don't know where I'll find you that beach, but I've been told by some of the locals that on the other side of that mountain is a treasure. And I can satiate my need of being a thalassophile. You learned a new word on Tech Today, but let me tell you more about this absolute beauty and beast while we head out on a classic Tech Today road trip. Let me tell you something really interesting when we're talking about range anxiety with EVs, and that's because tech is getting so much better in these cars, and I think that's what Audi's been working on. Yes, the range is much improved when you compare this to the previous e-tron. They claim 600 kilometers, but I just want to show you what coasting on the highway is like. We're here, the scenic route, Nandi Hills, right here in front of us, but let me show you the range. Right here, a short while ago, it was showing 410, 411 kilometers. If I keep a light touch on the accelerator, it goes up to 415, at times even 416, 418 kilometers. So even when you're coasting in a car like this on the highway, the range gets better. When you use regen, the range gets better. And then when you have all these fast charging options and the charging infrastructure gets better, the range gets a whole lot better as well. That's all I wanted to say about range anxiety, which is mitigated to a large extent with the tech on display in this e-tron. While the cabin is fairly insulated and when you're driving the car, it really grips the road, very planted on the turns as well, and responds to even a light touch on the throttle. One thing about the Q8 is if I want to invest in an SUV, I want a slightly more commanding presence on the road. But for now, I think it is very comfortable to drive. That said, I'd be happier if it was a little higher and the design was a little bolder. Okay, first real test for the Audi Q8 e-tron. Is it a bumpy road? Yes, it is. Not the best road. Okay, you felt a bit of the bump, but it's all worth it when you have a view like this. An absolute pleasure driving the Q8 e-tron on this road trip, but I want to take a little bit of a pit stop and tell you a little bit more about the car. Now, if you look at the design right here, this is the new Audi logo, and that's not all. It comes with a grille, which is actually very, very useful. Yes, these are actual air intakes, and Audi claims that they help with aerodynamics. Now, another thing that their engineering team has been working on is improving one thing the e-tron was slightly laggard in that department, which happens to be the most important thing in an EV, which is the battery pack. Now, this one has an improved battery pack of 114 kilowatt hours. And in terms of charging, one thing that I really like is a simple design thing. Reminds me a lot of how, well, Dyson does stuff. Join me on this side and you'll see that this is a double roll. We have another charging flap over here. So yes, the fact that there are charging flaps on both sides is something they've continued from the previous e-tron to this particular beast. Now, if you want to juice up this particular e-tron, it's possible now in 30 minutes because they have improved their batteries by a fair bit. The Sportback has nearly 600 kilometers of range, and so does the SUV. The range improvement is nearly 32% this time around. almost 100 kilometers more. So you have two charging flaps, but there's two ways to charge this car. Of course, there's AC charging and DC charging. In terms of AC charging, if you have an 11 kilowatt charger, it would take nearly 8.5 hours. But if you double that with a 22 kilowatt charger, which works right over here, it would be done in 4.5 hours. But if you want to go with DC charging, this car can actually charge from 10 to 80%, and believe you me, in 30 minutes. The minute you get into the cockpit of the Q8 e-tron, it looks quite familiar. But of course, when I say familiar, I say it in a good way because it's premium, it's got that rich feel, and you feel like you're in control. There's no real distractions when you sit in an Audi. Everything is consistent. It's very different in terms of their approach from what BMW does, which is, I feel like, one notch above what Apple does with their iPhones and iOS devices, or what Mercedes does with MBUX. A lot of features which come in handy, but it's a very subjective sort of choice if you like it or you don't. Over here, there's this dual screen infotainment system, nothing fancy and big like those curved displays in other EVs. Very utilitarian, very simple, but it all works efficiently and perfectly. Now, all the main features are largely the same when it comes to this particular EV. But yes, if you're talking about that adaptive air suspension, and if we go into the car mode, it has a bunch of modes in Audi Drive Select. For instance, if you look at efficiency, the car will be lowered down a bit. In comfort mode, for it to be hugging the road. Dynamic, so it'll be much lower, hugging the road, and then obviously changing as the geography changes. And then if you go on off-road, the car is automatically raised, and you'll see that the car is visibly being raised. What a location, what a road trip with this SUV. And honestly, I have to either pinch myself and remind myself that this is an EV, or I need to do this. The charging flap opens on this side. Well, there's a charging flap on that side as well. That's the Audi concept of simplexity. I like that concept, the fact that you can make complex things simple using technology and all of these hacks that we've seen with this particular vehicle. It's very windy over here, so forgive me, but inside the car, it was very well insulated. Not like the Range Rover SV, where of course you have active noise cancellation and those microphones doing all the tricks, but the cabin insulation and the materials used, and just largely with the way the car has been designed, you can barely hear anything from the road, any unwanted, unnecessary sounds, and of course the rustle of the wind as well. But if you think about where this particular EV is placed, there's the Jaguar I-Pace, which didn't really pick up, especially here in India, in terms of, well, a like apples and apples comparison. That's the closest it gets. That is a great drive, but this one now has addressed the problem of range anxiety. There's, of course, that Audi Quattro four-wheel drive. That entire vibe which we're getting over here is only possible with this particular SUV. There's also a sportback version of the car, which I think looks really slick, and we had some time with that EV as well. But the SUV seems like the more practical option. And of course, with India's obsession with SUVs and the Q lineup for Audi, which has done really well over the years, I think this is an EV which we will see on the roads. I actually hope to take this to Mumbai very soon, maybe the Sportback, and see what it's like with some of these modes, some of the engineering, some of the tech, and of course drive this at night to see what those matrix lights are all about. But all in all, it is very consistent with that Quattro philosophy and all of these small tech hacks. I think the Q8 e-tron does a fantastic job, especially when you're taking it out for a road trip. What if I told you that the biggest news development from the tech world doesn't happen to be Twitter or Threads or anything from the ChatGPT and Bard world, or even from the smartphone world? In fact, the first segment was all about a big EV launch, and now we got to tell you about what Netflix is doing, and it's not so good news. they're planning to clamp down on password sharing. Let's be honest, all of us share our passwords with friends or family, but Netflix now has decided to finally clamp down on this in India. They tried this in other markets, but now it's time for India. Is there any sort of backlash from you, the Netflix consumer? Are you going to be signing up for a new account? How is this going to work? We're going to come to you, the Tech Today community, but first, let's figure out what Netflix is up to with this new clampdown on password sharing in India.
Netflix has finally dropped the shoe in India by restricting password sharing, a feature that it has been talking about for years now. Netflix account holders will no longer be able to share their passwords with their friends and family members sitting miles away from them. One Netflix account can only be accessed by users living under one roof, or as Netflix calls it, one single household. These users can access the account while they are in the house or on the move or on a vacation. The company has announced strict regulations to keep users in check. Netflix will verify a home device by verification code, and that device has to connect to home Wi-Fi network for at least once in a month. The streaming platform has put off this moment for years now. Back in 2019, when Netflix saw a drop in subscriber count, it identified that password sharing was eating into the subscriber growth. However, the COVID-led lockdown brought a wave of new subscribers to the platform, which masked the extent of password sharing issue. Back in 2022, Netflix witnessed a loss of 970,000 subscribers, which was the largest quarterly loss ever. That's when Netflix started restricting password sharing in some parts of the world, but Indian users were largely unaffected until now. It was a risky move, as it was expected to anger the consumers who have a pool of streaming platforms to choose from and question the company's goodwill that it had built over the years. It was a strange turnaround for the company that had once tweeted, "Love is sharing a password." There was a backlash from users in the markets where it was implemented, but to everyone's surprise, in the second quarter of 2023, it gained 5.9 million paid users as compared to losing 1 million in the same quarter last year. While the growth has dialed down the pressure on the company, drawing a hard line on who should be allowed to share a password is a tricky task. There are still many questions like, should kids be allowed to share their parents' password while going off to college or moving to another city? What if I travel a lot or have a second home? Well, these questions are yet to be answered by the company. Until then, if you like sharing your Netflix password with your loved ones, hold on tight. It seems like it's going to be an expensive, not so chill ride from here on. Over to you, Aayush.
So it's a simple problem, but honestly, it seems like a complex solution. How will this pan out? And more importantly, what do you, the consumer, the Tech Today community, think about this development? We thought it's important to come to you and ask all the questions so Netflix and all of us can get some answers. Here's a Tech Today special report.
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
No. Yeah, I watch.
Very frequently. There are a lot of web series which I watch on Netflix.
Generally, yes, we do. We Indians believe in sharing and caring. So, yeah.
Yes, I have my password shared with my dad, with my mom, with my sister.
Oftenly, most oftenly, I used to do it.
No, I'm really upset about that move.
It's a very bad decision by them.
Definitely, I'm upset. I'm not happy with this move.
I don't think so it's a good decision because frankly speaking, it's the time of mobile, right? We use Netflix on sometime on traveling like mobile device or car device. So if they will restrict them within a household, then what is the benefit of this?
We go for the other apps which are available on the market. This Prime, Disney Hotstar. Now Jio is also coming.
Definitely, maybe I'll stop using it because it's not worth to pay this much amount to watch the series, and because we have other options as well like Amazon Prime. I already have the Amazon Prime account, and lots of OTT platforms are there.
We get seamless exploring of the series. Many of the movies which are latest releases, which we may not be able to go to theater, or for some other users, we use Netflix.
Actually, it is not a good move. I guess people would stop using the Netflix because in terms of the costing and everything, it is on a higher end. So what I think that people would rather shift to a pirated website or a different OTT platforms because Netflix won't be an affordable option for us.
I have heard about it, and I think India is a very price-sensitive market, and I think this move might take away few of their customers away, because I think there are other OTT platforms as well in India which are really active, and I think it's not a good move by them. But yeah, I understand because of some pressure on them in terms of costing, etc. They have chosen on this particular path. But as a user, I don't think it's a really good move.
Now you've seen what's happening in the content world. You've also seen the biggest EV launch of the week, of course, on Tech Today. But we call it the Tech Today multiverse, or Tech Today exists in the Business Today multiverse. Because we're on stands, we're online, and we're on air, of course, on your favorite technology show. This, I like to say, is the Flipverse. So for this segment, welcome to the Flipverse. Now, at some point or the other on the Tech Today platform, you would have seen a review of each of these products. In fact, we've been to the launch event of each of these products everywhere around the world, spoken to their global teams, and gotten you the lowdown on this technology. Sometimes the talk is about how many flips and folds, what the water resistance and dust resistance ratings are like, and sometimes it comes down to one elementary problem. If you're trying to give a screen, an external display to the customer, how big does it need to be? So it's kind of interesting. If you start off with the Samsung Flip, it's a very minimal screen with minimal notifications and widgets. Very similar to old flip phones, and Samsung's had 4 generations to get it right. Sells a lot. I've seen a lot of Samsung Flip devices, but that's also because it's Samsung. Then came along the Oppo Flip with a far more functional, utilitarian screen, but you were still left asking for more. Maybe the ultimate, the culmination was in this particular Moto Razr 40 Ultra, which you got a first look of on Tech Today, with a screen that is massive and actually covers the entire external display with so much more utility. You can play games on the screen, you can also get turn-by-turn navigation on Google Maps. They've also tied up with Spotify to give you, well, that external display experience. But that's what the flip phones in the market give you at this price point, and that price point is not cheap. Nearly 90,000 rupees with cashbacks and sales and offers in the 80,000 to 90,000 rupee range. This is what you can get in India. Let's give you the specs on screen because that's the boring part. We actually want to talk about, well, a bigger problem and a bigger solution. Well, you've got the specs on screen and largely they're the same. If you look at the Samsung and the Motorola's, they come with a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, and then this one comes with a MediaTek Dimensity, which is a very capable processor, but it's not necessarily the processor of choice with a lot of other foldable devices. But things are changing in the foldable market, and as you can see the displays, this one, which has just come out, the Moto Razr 40 Ultra, seems to be the most useful. When you open up these devices, that's yet another opportunity for the Moto Razr 40 Ultra to shine. That's because it comes with a nearly stock Android experience. That means the experience that you get on the Motorola, of course with its legacy, with the acquisition with Google, and now of course it's run by Lenovo, you actually get a Pixel-like experience on this device. So if you ever wanted a Pixel flip phone, this is the closest that it gets to in this current market. Now there's news that OnePlus is launching a foldable. Will it be a flip? Will it be a fold? We'll have to see. When it comes to camera performance, even the Oppo Flip device does a fairly decent job. But honestly, there's something about the Samsung experience when it comes to flagship level stuff that when you hold this phone, it feels a lot more flagship. Maybe it's their marketing. It's also the fact that Samsung has one big advantage inherently, which is, of course, their distribution and the ecosystem that Samsung's building on. From all of these devices until Apple enters the fray with flip devices, the Samsung really has you covered. But then if you compare all of them, there are pros and cons with all these devices. I really think it comes down to the display, but you must write into us and tell us if you're looking for, well, a hamburger fold device like the Samsung Fold or even the Techno Phantom Fold, then those are productivity devices. You can do so much on the external screen, so much inside as well, and they're also great for content consumption. with these devices, do you just need a flip form factor, which just gives you notifications up top? In fact, the cheaper Motorola Razr, the standard one, doesn't have flagship specs, and it also, well, comes with a similar setup like this, a much smaller screen. It's a lot more reasonable, around 50 to 60,000 rupees. So you have to make that pick out there. But I feel like if you look at these devices launched within 1 year from 3 competing companies, it looks like generation 1, generation 2, and then the final generation. But that also means Samsung might be feeling the heat, and because they've gotten so good with foldables and they are, well, the first movers in the foldable space and really enjoy a big chunk of the market, maybe Samsung at Galaxy Unpacked next week will be unveiling the Flip 5 and of course the Fold and the entire ecosystem of products. But I have a feeling that at Galaxy Unpacked, and this is what the leaks say as well, we will have a much bigger external display. Well, if you're on the market for a flip device, my advice would be, well, pick none of these up for the next 4 or 5 days. Wait for Galaxy Unpacked and see what Samsung will be revealing to us. I have a feeling, of course, it's going to be a power-packed game changer of a device. So there will be, well, a much updated rendition of this flip device to compete with this one. But if you're just in a hurry to pick it up and you want to buy it as soon as you saw tech today, at this point, this is the true value for money flip device, the Moto Razr. Well, if you have enjoyed the show, all I can say is do write into us on our social media handles, give Tech Today a shout out, and of course, let us know what you've liked and what you perhaps haven't liked. But I can tell you, if you like K-pop and K-dramas, there's a special surprise for you next week, where we will see new versions of new devices launched here on Tech Today. Until next week, adios.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.